All right, first, make sure you know what you're after here. Which finding, if true, would most directly support the hypothesis? Okay, so let's see what the hypothesis is. And I can already tell just based on this italics that there's going to be words I'm not going to bother pronouncing, so if you hear me skipping over things, it's because I don't have the brain power to pronounce these weird names. Just move on. That's not what they're asking about. In the mountains of Brazil, these things, two plants in this family, establish themselves on soilless, nutrient-poor patches of quartzite rock. Plant ecologists, whatever, use these microscopic analysis to determine that the roots of these things, which grow directly into the quartzite, have clusters of fine hairs near the root tip. Further analysis indicated that these hairs secrete both malic and citric acids. So just to be clear, we have not gotten to the hypothesis yet. So there's a lot of stuff here. I might need to go back to it, but now I'm going to clue in. The researchers hypothesized that the plants depend on dissolving underlying rock with these acids, as the process not only creates channels for continued growth, but also releases phosphates that provide the vital nutrient phosphorus. Okay, so the plants dissolve the rock with acid to grow and for nutrients. Notice how the highlighted words are all really easy words that you should know. So there's some stuff in between I'm skipping, but this is the skill of being able to kind of just like condense it. So if we're supporting it, then we want something about the rock, the acids, the growth, or the nutrients. So let's see what checks some boxes here. A, other species in this family are found in terrains with more soil, but have root structures similar to those. Well, why are we going to other plants? Right? What was the hypothesis? That these plants, right? It's these plants. Why am I going to other plants? That seems like a trap. So I think that's wrong, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay. B, though these things both secrete citric and malic acids, each species produces the acids in different proportions. Well, who cares? I mean, it doesn't tell me what the acids do. These are both similar. They're trying to say at the beginning that these are similar plants. So I don't know why we would want to say that now they're different, right? We're saying that these plants have a similar property. Saying that they're different seems like we're going the opposite direction here. I don't know. It seems wrong too. C, the roots of these things carve new entry points into rocks even when cracks in the surface are readily available. Okay, well, let's just see. Even without understanding it, let's see what this is doing here. We're talking about roots. They were definitely doing that before. They're carving or dissolving the rock. Okay. They're going to the rock. That's checking that part off. So we're talking about the growth and we're talking about the rock. That seems like it's checking a lot of boxes. Let's look at D. These things thrive even when transferred to the surface of rocks that do not contain phosphates. Well, maybe that supports it because they want the growth and they're thriving. Okay. It's definitely not A or B. So between C and D, I think it's going to be C. This is just because I think they worded this hypothesis strangely. The hypothesis is basically using this not only but also to say that the actually more important or more interesting, more revolutionary idea, I guess, that these researchers have gotten is that the acid is not just to dissolve the rock, but more interestingly, more importantly, it's also giving them the nutrients. So it seems like, yeah, because they're talking about the acid, the roots. I think it's going to be C. Because basically what's happening here is a bit of a leap. Basically what they're saying is the plants need to carve into the rock for this nutrient. So even if they had other paths that they could take, right? So even if these plants could go into cracks that are already made, you'd think, oh, well, that's easier for the plant. Why wouldn't it just take the crack that's already there? Well, the crack is only part of the story, is what the hypothesis is saying. It's that the crack is for growth, but they really need the nutrients that come from dissolving the rock. So even if there's cracks, they're still going to have to dissolve the rock because they need that nutrient. So C is basically saying that they're going to ignore cracks because it's much more important to them to find phosphorus, the phosphates that are in the rock. And that's kind of, it's so stupidly worded, but that's kind of what the hypothesis is saying, is that it's much more emphasis is being placed on the nutrients than on the dissolving. Or I should say on the growth that comes from the dissolving. D is kind of flipping it and kind of turning it away from the phosphates and saying that the phosphates don't really matter. Yeah, this is a tricky one. I'd be very confident that it's C, but honestly, I'd still mark it for review because it feels like I'm making a lot of like leaps here, that I'm bringing a lot of my own kind of guesses at what they might mean here, and that's usually not a good sign. Sometimes you have to do it. Some hard questions require us to understand the logic behind things and to kind of make some connections that are a little further apart, but as much as possible, we want the lines to just say that. For me here, it's really that the emphasis is on the nutrients because that's the kind of but also piece of the hypothesis. So to me, the fact that C is much more about nutrients as well is what makes it the better choice. But I really only notice that when I'm comparing C and D side by side. And so this is another piece of it. I didn't understand really A or B at the beginning. That's okay. But when I knew that C and D were both kind of hitting some of the key points, I was able to like, all right, what's different, right? There's some difference between these. That helps me see it more clearly and then hopefully go back to the lines and see which piece matters. It's tricky, it takes practice, but hopefully I gave you some stuff to think about for the next hard question.